Hey guys, today we're talking about the Duelist Cup Phase 2. So honestly, with Phase 1, not really a big deal. I don't feel it's super problematic or anything, but yeah, I played a lot of the most recent Duelist Cup, and I'll say it was not an enjoyable time for a lot of reasons. So starting with I guess, meta for it. Okay, so there were a lot of different decks that were semi-playable or playable. So the issue with this is that your end board and stuff, and what you're doing is very hard to work with. So in terms of like every single combo deck that you have to deal with, board breakers, I feel like were just not a good option. So let's go with Raigeki for example. Okay, so let's say you're playing Raigeki. So this works against Kishtira, sure, okay, but what does this not work against? Well, Math Mech. Okay, so there are multiple reasons why it doesn't work against Math Mech. So first we have Deceive Worm. So Deceive Worm can negate the Raigeki. Raigeki does not really do anything against Laplacian, and it does not deal with Super Factorial. And it doesn't deal with the hand traps in your opponent's hand, which they have plenty of. So let's just say, for example, you were playing, I don't know, Mikanko. Let's say you do have a kaiju, you kaiju the terahertz, then you don't have to deal with the Deceive Worm, right? But you cannot resolve Arabesque if your opponent just has Ash Blossom Jewett Spring, or you might not be able to resolve Mayo Washidori if your opponent has a Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. And that's just how that goes, right? And then, of course, yeah, there is still the activation of the super factorial to summon Laplacian, which is going to hand loop. So, speaking of which, did you guys know that it's non-targeting, meaning it can actually remove Uli and like an equip spell? So, yeah, that can be done. And then it hand loops, and then it's an Omni negate. So, that does a lot of damage. And still, they have their generic still. So, yeah, not that great. So if you were playing board breakers, like maybe Raigeki, Forbidden Droplet, Dark Ruler, no more, it doesn't do that much because the typical end board should end on like just two monsters. So it's just Heat Soul and Terahertz. Terahertz probably already did its draws, so then it's just essentially the copy of Terahertz left on field. And if you do out that terahertz, your opponent probably has like 4 or 5 cards in hand, and then there's the possibility that they also have Cyanide Conflict. So Cyanide Conflict. So this is just Omni Negate, then Banish, and then there is still the copy of Super Factorial, which is Hand Loop and not Destruction Removal, but it's Send to Graveyard. Uh, essentially 2 cards on field. So a spell trap, a monster, both non-targeting, and then there is the Omni Negate from Diameter, as well as the hand loop. So this is just Math Mech, all right. And Math Mech is still mostly a going first deck, which has its own issues. So the most notable one is Math Mech actually could not run a lot of backer removal. So it had inherently bad matchup against like control decks in general, like heavy control. So the worst case scenario for a Math Mech player is let's say you're getting stunned. Yeah, that's pretty bad because they were playing stuff like the Deer Servant, Dogmatic. Okay, I can't spell. So Dogmatic. What? Okay. So Here's a fun little combo that just isn't that fun really, but activate Nadir Servant, sending Garura, draw one, adding Dogmatica Ecclesia, special summon Ecclesia, and then adding Punishment, just send Natis and destroy like essentially two cards from your opponent. Oh, and then there's just a bunch of floodgates on the back. Yeah, that's kind of no bueno, I guess. Speaking of which, is this one of those cards that can? Oh, you can only activate one Nadir Servant per turn. Well, I didn't check if it negates activation or effect on like mathematics stuff, but assuming it negates activation, that doesn't sound super fun to play. But anyways, yeah, you don't really have back row removal, so like if you were to deal with Inspector, Border, Fossil Dyna, any of that kind of stuff, it would be very hard to deal with. And that's not considering like the back row yet. So yeah. Anyway, moving along. Next up, we have Dragon Link. So Dragon Link is just well, I don't think it was that good for the event. I guess some people like playing it, so that's fine. But there are issues with like this as well in particular. So first off, it's a little bit better to run pistols in Dragon Link because it's part of your engine as well. So that's kind of strong for them. Except when your pistols do literally nothing, then they are completely useless, and you were better off playing something else that ran some non-engine that actually did stuff. I mean, their engine can do things, but I mean, I don't think now was the time for it. Like, just saying, what do you do against stun going second? You lose. That's pretty much how a lot of these decks go. And then there's also the fact that this has like an obscenely bad matchup. Like a lot of the decks actually just have a really bad matchup against Kishtira. So notably, we have Dragon Link, which requires their graveyard. We have not just Dragon Link. We have Math Mech. We have one more Branded. Yeah, but those were the primary three, I guess, right? All have a super bad matchup just because of Rise Art. So if a Rise Art happens, all three of those decks are completely just boned going second. And of course, like Ishtira is pretty good at making Rise Art. Let's see if we can get a decent hand real quick. So not this one. Let's see, this one getting close. Ah, here. This one's pretty close. Now, if I had just like one birth in hand and a unicorn along with like Rise Art, that is a fairly hard to stop a Rise Art, like pretty damn hard. But yeah, like here, this one pretty hard to stop as well. And then yeah, okay, this is fairly hard to stop as well. We had Called by on this one. This one we have like Fenrir, Theosis, Birth, and then Scareclaw Cash. So let's see. How many cards would you have to negate here? One, two. So it's like two negates that you'd have to have for this. Rough. And then this. Yeah. This doesn't really do much. So yeah. It's a bit of a mixed bag. So that goes back to another point that really sucks is like Kishtira consistency is just complete whack. So you can just get completely gut hands or completely like trash hands, like trash hand right here, but it's playable at least. So if this was going second, this becomes a lot better. If I was going like second into Dragon Link, and I can just Shifter and Shifter, although I don't like Shifter that much, this just has too much value not to run. This is just better than Crow, for example. The only like somewhat issue is if you're doing the mirror, but even in the mirror, Dimension Shifter just has too much value. So notably, this just prevents your opponent from activating Troll, Effect Veiler, and Max C. So assuming I use this turn 1, my opponent can't use any of those hand traps against me anyway, so they would need to use it turn 2. But oh wait, you can't activate it turn 2, and also this called By is now dead because of Shifter. So awkward. But yeah, now they just need specifically Ash Blossom, Imperm, stuff like that, that works under Shifter. And their like entire part of their engine, if they drew too much engine, they just can't play it at all, so they would have no interaction, and then it's free to do whatever I want. So with this hand, I think you can actually probably OTK. Cool. And then here, this is another one of those classic bad hands, so here we actually have no play at all, even if we shifter, so pretty bad. So this one, barely playable. Going second, this is alright. Kinda, we've evenly matched Ghost Spell if this stops our opponent's setup a bit. And then evenly, and then we can Unicorn Rise our Birth. Yeah, that's alright, I guess. But like, generally speaking, if we don't get to go for a setup or Rise Heart, this falls off a lot. And this doesn't even consider the fact of how I think kind of everyone realized at some point that Cash was just pretty good going first, right? Like consistency aside. And around I don't know when, but yeah, there was just a lot of points where I was playing against Cash Deer in general. So I don't think at the very start of the event it was that much, but I think the later the event went, the more cash I started seeing. But whatever. So Kashtira, the issue with this is going second, it's good into itself. So if I were to activate Shangri-Ira, this opens up my opponent to just, for example, let's say they open Rise Heart, normal summon Rise Heart, and then they can special summon a Rise Heart, attack into like Shangri-Ira, unless I summon this in attack position maybe, like if I summon all of my guys in attack position, that might help. And then they can go ahead, make Zeus on top of their Rise Heart. The way to play around this is one of two ways. So you can either put everything in attack position, I guess, or you can put, I guess, well, 3 material Arise Heart. So when your opponent goes battle, you can just banish whatever they special summon. If they try to special summon a dude, you'll just banish whatever they summoned with Fenrir. And that's kind of just how that goes. But in general, pretty damn bad matchup. The full combo you'd be trying against like every other archetype, I guess. Like your best endboard would preferably have like Fenrir and stuff, right? And of course Shangri-Ira. Even if you have 3 mat Arise Heart with like Shangri-Ira Fenrir and maybe one other dude, it still feels bad that there is like a risk of you just getting completely bent over just from activating Shangri-Ira. And then your opponent just Zeusing your board. You just don't have recovery. Like, this is enough to make a Rise Heart. So let's pretend I open Unicorn. What's my next card? Shifter. Completely dead. Not even activatable. Yeah, so I just can't play after this. So I'm really praying to top deck like Unicorn or something like that in order to try to set up again. I don't even get to keep Birth after Zeus, so yeah. Pretty bad there, but Kashira essentially oppresses every other archetype here, so it's kind of playable for that reason. Also, out of all of the decks, I believe this goes first into stun like better than notably Math Mech and Dragon Link. Branded is actually kind of okay, depending on exactly what your opponent has. Notably, Hipstera has a really good like open you can do. It's simple. So you just simply open Birth and Fenrir. So let's say your opponent has Fossil Dyna. I don't care that you have Fossil Dyna. I will just normal summon Fenrir, you know? You can do that. With Branded, they have Guardian Chimera, and that'll just work. You can just set some cards and then boom, summon Guardian Chimera. So that's somewhat okay under like Tikaboo. So let's say Branded opening, discarding who knows what, and then we'll just set a guy. It doesn't really matter who it is. And then we have Branded in red. As long as we have one monster in hand now, boom, Guardian Chimera, pop 2, non-targeting. So that will help. And we also get to draw one, which is fine. And if we had, for example, a Despian tragedy, then we also get to search a branded spell trap, so maybe a branded fusion for after. So that is pretty good, I guess. If you get Fossil Dyna, not much you can do there. It's mostly Fossil Dyna. And Inspector Border that are super difficult. If it's just like Tikaboo, that's possible. Like Tikaboo, maybe Rivalry. Probably a little bit doable. What is Guardian Chimera anyways? This is a beast. But it is dark, so under Gozen this is pretty makeable. Not sure if this is really makeable under Rivalry. Maybe. There is also like the option of just Branded Fusion, make a big guy, and then you can probably just keep trying to do that every single turn because Mirror Jade sends for cost. And what does Albion say? Do 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 do. Directly from the deck. Yeah. That doesn't quite work then. Alright. Well, yeah. So board breakers in general, like what board breakers do you want to use? So I'll just go through a bunch of them. So let's say we have Droplet, useless against Kishtira, okay? And very useful against Dragon Link, but not useful against Mathmech. So then Dark Ruler no more. So this is useful against Kishtira. Very useful actually. And then this is also useful against Dragon Link, but once again, not useful against Mathmech. And then there's also the issue of it not being useful against like a lot of control decks. So that sucks. And also stun. And runic stun. Which was about like if I were to put my games like just as percents, it's like about 50 to 45% of my games were probably against Kishtira. And then about like, I don't know, 30% was against just variants of stun. Normal stun, just straight up regular stun, about probably 20%, and then like 15% runic stun. And then Mathmech was not that high actually, so maybe like 5% of my games were against like Mathmech, and then like 10% was maybe against like Branded, and then another 5%. Well, I don't have the exact numbers, but around there was maybe Dragon Link ish and Branded. So the deck I played against the most was basically Kishtira, Stun, and then we have a lot of just a combination of Mathmech, Branded, and Dragon Link. Dragon Link being the least played out of those three, I think. Kinda close to Mathmech in that sense, but whatever. And I think Lab, well, I've spotted a few Lab players out in the wild, but it's like, whatever. I mean, Lab, not that bad for me because I'm playing Ghost Spell alongside Ash Blossom, so that's fine. I don't know why, but people randomly were just playing around Ghost Spell but not Ash, and that was just super annoying. Well, whatever. And then, let's see. So, there was also Like, just the issue of, like, being unable to realistically run board breakers and having to run so many hand traps, right? But then, like, stun had high representation as well, so the issue with stun in particular is that it can run 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. So what am I supposed to do against this even if I have back row removal? So I just get judgmented and then I can't play, right? So that's problematic for me, right? I guess. So at some points I swap my ratio of red reboot to 2 instead, and I can also just not draw these when I need them, so that's cool, I guess. Like, let's do this and we'll remove, I don't know, uh Rhoda? Sure. Draw 5. Did we open double evenly? Okay, so this is one of those games I would probably win against Stun. Open 2 Solemn Judgments. Come on, and then we have Cross for 6. Crap. I mean, that helps a bit. Not that much, but you know. And then here, Red Reboot, 1. Okay, and then evenly and Red Reboot. But now, we don't have a starter, so Cross for 6. Anything? Just Fenrir. I mean, it's Fenrir with Birth, so that's good enough. So this hand works, and then this hand does not work. Wave Driver. And then this hand, evenly, it works. This hand, nothing, doesn't work. This hand, doesn't work. And then this hand works. This hand does literally nothing, can't do anything. So, I mean, test hands are test hands. When it actually came down to it, I just wasn't opening my backer removal when I needed it sometimes, and it was just RNG that kind of racked up my losses, so yeah. So I was around 100 wins. I'm not sure how many losses exactly, but I was stuck at around like 10, 12K. That was kind of like where I peaked for this event. Since day one, pretty much. I couldn't get any higher than that because of like straight up RNG, really. So part of it was just losing coin flips like en masse. So I just lose 7 coin flips in a row. Oh, look, now I'm back down to, I don't know, like 7K. Cool. And I have to climb back, crawl back through that. And then we make it back. Mass coin flip boss. Or we just open like ungodly awful hands like this one. Well, actually it didn't work, but yeah. Imagine I just get a hand like this. And it's like, okay, I have 2 imperm. I hope I draw into a cash name. Big bang. That for sure is not a cash name. Surely my opponent will still be bricked with their like a bajillion cards in hand. Red Reboot. Ash Blossom. Red Reboot. Price art. Cool. Turn 1. Turn 3. 5. 7. 9. 11. Yeah, surely the game will go into like turn 11 and my only interactions being infinite impermanence. Yeah, I'll definitely survive till turn 11. Yeah, sometimes I just got hands like that, like actually way too often, honestly. And then that sucked. And sometimes even if you do draw the starter, your opponent simply has 1 hand trap with your name on it, and it's like, well, yeah, alright, I guess. You have to be bricking on something, right? And then, yeah, that was not great. So, being unable to run board breakers felt like pretty bad, just in general, because of the decks that were played. You don't really have good options. You were much better off just running hand traps and trying to stop the combo instead of breaking the board. And that also includes like how evenly match wasn't that good against Mathmech, but like pistols were super good, or like maybe even a crow, unless they had Zionet conflict, which they could just have. So not super good in that situation either. But yeah, it was just essentially a pretty miserable time. So I guess there were some other decks floating around too, which you couldn't really tech for. There was like, I don't know, Flu, for example. So Flu, not really that big of an issue. What was an issue was just like during this event, I just got like Feather Storm, like literally I don't even know how many times. So RPs Featherstorm. Somehow, I got hit by this like 8 times, like within like 10 games, where I just lost coin flip. Oh, cool, Harpy's Featherstorm. I did open Red Reboot for one of those games, but cool. I didn't have a starter in hand, so I couldn't play. Or maybe I did have a starter and I just got ashed after like a Featherstorm, so I couldn't play. Great. Lovely. Fun. And yeah, that was not great either. And during certain periods, I just got like a lot of people playing like Math Mech and Branded against me, and I was like, okay, maybe they're starting to show up. I switched to a list that uses Bestials, and then literally, I just matchmake into like Ladolce and uh, Ice Shade and stuff like that, right? Just stuff that I absolutely have no targets for Bestials now. So that's miserable. So the most reliable thing I felt like I could play during this event was just Kishtira, because it was good against Kishtira, which is dumb as it sounds, Zeus. Just summon a dude. And also, evenly matched is really effective against Kishtira, because you actually have a good amount of macro in this deck. Half of my deck is like spell traps here. So let's say we have like, well, not really this hand. Let's look for like a semi-decent hand, please. So this hand we'll have like called by set in case they break through our copy of Arise Heart, they remove it somehow. Just to have this as contingency, I guess. Might as well. Doesn't super matter if it gets Dustered. And then we probably Unicorn with Birth, so that's full combo, and then we can throw in like Ogre or something so we can grab Prep or Big Bang. There's like some variants to it. And then next card we draw is Prosp, which is cool, I guess. And Gamma is dead though. So if we prosper 6, I just check in. One more. Yeah. So we could reasonably maybe hit Birth. Potentially. That's great. Speaking of which, I remember I had a Prosp that hit absolutely the worst possible cards in my deck. So I just needed like any cash I could special summon and then I just get uh evenly matched, evenly matched, evenly matched. And then after that I had I believe it was Fearleman's Kishtira, Scareclaw Kishtira, and then Kishtira Theosis as my 6 cards revealed off of Prosp. Well, that was a miserable time, wasn't it? It could have been Big Bang actually and not Theosis, but I mean, it's like the same thing really in that case, but whatever. Yeah, just overall not having a good time. So, to summarize so far, board breakers were super hard to run because just your board breakers might not be good. Oh, speaking of which, actually, I forgot Pearly did exist. I didn't see that much Pearly. I saw Pearly less times than I saw Dragon Link, but if you happen to get Pearlied, do you have an out? Well, in this case, maybe enough hand traps will just do them in. But speaking of which, Kaijus. Are Kaijus actually good against any of these decks? Well, it's alright against, for example, Kashtira, unless they do the combo that doesn't play around Kashtira cards. So they could have, for example, Unicorn Fenrir alongside some back row, like hand traps, whatever, and that is still somewhat rough to deal with. And there is still the option of, like, let's assume you do Kaiju them, and they have Scareclaw Kishtira though. They can Scareclaw Kishtira, banish a Rise Heart, special summon back a Rise Heart with preparations. If you open cracks enough, this is just something you can do. But you also end up having to play into Nibiru. Speaking of which, Nibiru was played like a decent amount, I think, just randomly. I mean, that hand trap is actually pretty good against essentially everything. So, yeah. But if you like play around Nibiru, there are games you'll lose because you didn't extend far enough, and then there's like the other issue of Nibiru just wiping the floor with you because you extended too much. And there's nothing you can really do about it, right? Sometimes it's like, I need one more summon for lethal, I'll just go for it, and boom, you get nibbed. Great. Well, that ends up sucking a lot. And yeah, there are a lot of decks that can't get lethal unless I guess you're playing maybe Math Mech. So essentially Cyberse. Getting lethal, like especially if your opponent is going like first and they just pass on like pretty much nothing, you can't even lethal if they have nib. So that just sucks sometimes. But that is not like the biggest issue, I guess. So then nib being played a lot actually kind of sucked as well. Nib hasn't been played that much in a while, but this is probably the Duelist Cup. Like it's been played the most in a while, a long ass while. So yeah, not a whole lot you can do about that. But I mean, this just made it like your life mission to just simply erase our past. Then I had like a period of time where I just got nibbed 7 games in a row and lost all of them. So that didn't feel great, I guess. But anyways, your best end board in cash is probably just a rise or pass. So you don't summon Shangri Era. Well, you don't have Shangri Era on your end board. So now you don't get like Zeused on and then just have your board completely wiped. And then there is like, Nibiru. So if you were to do the combo where like you start Unicorn, summon Fenrir, and then you summon Heart, and then Shangri-Ira, this is 4 summons, and then you use the effect of Shangri-Ira, and then a Heart on top of Heart. Then you just get completely wiped out by Nibiru, and it's sad. That's just the thing that can happen. But, I mean, you can play around that by just simply Heart passing, so great, I guess. There was also the option of if your opponent's not patient enough and they just drop like Nib right away, or you could bait it by trying to exit out of main phase. Sometimes you could actually extend far enough with like Birth and a copy of like, for example, Tear Cash or Sheer Ogre that can let you make a second Arise Heart, or you can just summon back Arise Heart with Prep once again. So yeah, Ogre is showing some of its value off here, I guess. You have to open like fairly decent to do that though, so yeah. The main points that made this event fun for me though is simply how you could run like macro removal aside from like evenly. The issue being runic stun mostly. So if I just run Duster for example, special summon Hugin, and that's not great. And the issue before we even look at this, I would only have 1 of Duster, and they have 2 of Tip, 3 of Flashing Fire, 2 of Destruction, 2 of Freezing Curses, 2 of Slumber, 3 of Smiting Storm, 3 of Golden Droplet, and 3 of Dispelling. Compared to my 1 copy of Duster. And then after I use that Duster is gone. And well, what's humorous is these guys get recycled and they also draw. So that's fun. So just generic back row removal's not gonna cut it, so you'll have to evenly. And what's more messed up is that Runic can still run, for example, Solemn Judgment. So that's super annoying. What should you do about this? I guess there's not much you can do about this, is there? Simply open evenly matched and simply uh, beat your opponent. Maybe you and Ash Blossom just bring to like stop them from drawing into runic cards or something. Maybe that would work. Well, if you were lucky enough to draw everything you needed, I guess. Or simply win the coin flip, because what they're doing here with the runic cards, not that big of a deal if you happen to go first. So then, in that case, you're just chilling, completely fine. But yeah, runic stun, miserable to play against. Normal stun, kind of miserable too. So with how it was played this event, I don't know the exact list, but there were lists that ran Fossil Dyna, and then you have like a caches like Kishir Unicorn, Fenrir, and then you also had like the dogmatic stuff. So those lists were particularly annoying. Like, yeah, you were getting floodgated, and they were able to break your board because Kashtira is good against Kashtira going second. So threaten Zeus, and then they can just normal summon Fossil Dyna Pass or something, and then you're just completely screwed. Unless you open crazy, I guess. So that's great, I guess. And I mean, a lot of the issue, like, I don't even mind having to play Kishira that much. Like, it's not my favorite deck to play, but like, if it is just the best deck to play, sure, whatever. It's not even like the absolute best deck by a mile. I think if I was given more time, I might have been able to find a better option than Cash. Because I feel like there might be like a really good deck build for this Duelist Cup in particular, but I can figure it out in time. But aside from that, like the most obnoxious thing for this Duelist Cup was how you were getting just floodgated left and right. Like I was also doing some floodgating because of Rise Heart, yeah. But Rise Heart somehow was like not the worst floodgate of all time to deal with. Is you can like hand trap me, you can like board break me, whatever. And anyways, you'll end up dealing with Rise Art somehow. Or you don't, whatever. But like the amount of times you would be seeing like normal summon Fossil Dyna Pass, crazy. There were Kashtira players that were doing normal summon Fossil Dyna Pass. That's like completely awful. But what were you supposed to do about this realistically? Like, come on. I don't think there was much you could do about this at all. And then there was like Mathmech's board, which was super annoying. So what are you supposed to do against Mathmech? So if you run them down with hand traps, they might have enough extenders to just get through what you're playing. So the issue with like Mathmech in particular when it comes to this regard is they have 2 copies of Cyanide Mining, 3 copies of Small World. So if we just consider that, they have 8 copies of Circular. And then they have less copies of Diameter, but that would be like 7 copies of Diameter. So a lot of the time my opponents were just simply opening Circular. Damn, I should just be the better duelist and, just magically will them not to have Circular. But, activate Circular, they will get Super Factorial, they will get Terahertz, and that's pretty hard to deal with. So even if you have evenly matched, it's not going to really work out that well because the Sivworm will be evenly matched. So that's not enough. If you Imperm, this doesn't even trade that well. Like a lot of your generics don't trade super well, going second into Mathmech. So you would have to stop them before they get into either Super Factorial or Terahertz potentially. So that's kind of like your hope, I guess. Maybe you just open Shifter and pray they don't open Cult By. Same odds for them to open Cult By as you to open Shifter. Speaking of which, of course, they're running like anti-hand trap stuff, like cross out as well. So that's hard to deal with. Well, yeah. So the primary decks that were problematic, even though I didn't particularly show it, is, well, apparently this time around happened to be not problematic. But like it is still somewhat problematic because if you don't like run kaijus, it can feel bad, but if you do run kaijus, it'll also feel bad. So that board breakers as well. Not so super effective against Expert Noir. So that contributed to the same issue Mathmech kind of applied there, so you can't really run board breakers super well. It's just evenly, if anything at all. That's probably your best bet, but not good against Mathmech at all because they have spell trap negates, like, and an Omni negate, so it's just not going to resolve. So that is kind of miserable. And of course, they have follow-up, make G-Golem bring back Transcode, bring back Splash Mage, and then Splash Mage can bring back someone. And they don't bring back Negated at all. Great. Well, except for Splash Mage. Well, that was me getting sidetracked a little bit there, but essentially with all of these decks, they just limited your card choices so hard. It, it made it a bit hard to deal with, like, the combination of these combo decks, and then, like, just stun in general. But it was really hard to deal with, like, let's just do a test hand. So, this hand would be really good against stun, right? I have evenly, and then I have like Ash Blossom for like demise, so that's really good. So I can wipe them, and then I have like a lot of plays. So we have normal summon Fenrir if we need to break through like Fossil Dyna. So this beats like Fossil Dyna, Moon Mirror Shield, for example, just coincidentally, you know. And then going second here against for example, Mathmech. Well, that's problematic. So evenly matched, I can just never resolve this. If I try to go to my battle phase with evenly, that's not going to work. I can't activate Fenrir because Terra hurts, so if I try to go battle, I have nothing to battle over. I can attack over Heat Soul, but they'll just Heat Soul draw, and then what, right? That doesn't do a whole lot. Triple tactics like Talent and Thrust also, I think, didn't feel that good to play. Like, what are you going to thrust? Take terahertz, and then what? That doesn't do much unless you're playing the mirror, I guess. So that's not great. So here, this might be good against just, for example, normal stun, runic stun. Maybe this is all right as well. We have the extenders for this, right? But then if I was against Mathmat going second, this hand is completely lost. So if this Ash Blossom doesn't stop what they're doing, we're screwed. We luckily drew Gamma here for turn though, so we might be able to catch Terahertz and Gamma on Terahertz. So that might do it, but if they open well enough, Gamma is not really an option, and it's not going to stop them. Speaking of which, they can still play around Gamma to an extent, so not really great. They could set Deceive last turn, so if we try to activate Birth, they could try to negate that, I guess, if they cared. But they also, of course, just have the option to simply Super Factorial away our Birth alongside like whatever monster we summon. So like maybe we special summon Fenrir. Worst case scenario, Super Factorial, sending Birth, Fenrir, and then Rise Heart from hand, and then we have absolutely nothing. So that's miserable. And then like against Dragon Link, I don't think that hand does it. Just straight up, it's not good enough. Unless you can somehow manage to make Zeus, it just matters if they put their monsters in defense. Um, I guess then, in that case, that might barely be enough, actually, to beat Dragon Link. It's just iffy. I think we can probably force Borload Savage, and then maybe if they don't have Ash Blossom or something, like no Imperm, that would help, but I don't know, it's still dicey. Actually, I think that hand would beat Dragon Link, depending on what they opened, but whatever. Nothing is fairly concrete here. It's just, even if you were to use your stuff optimally, it's just not going to feel great because you don't know what you're going to face. So the format is well, kind of diverse, so it's like, eh. Except they all lose the shifter. Except for like the mirror here with Kajira, so that's right. So Perlite doesn't do well. in Shifter, so you have that going as well. So yeah, it's just simply felt like very luck based, I guess, is how I would put it. So even though I have like all the outs in my deck, I can just not have the outs in hand and that'll just cause me to lose. Like, oh, did I draw the starter? No, I did not. Except we did with Fenrir. If we go first though, we lose. Hmm. Going second or first, this hand does not slap in the slightest. Yeah. So it's just yeah. Was overall pretty miserable event for me. So like the restrictions that kind of came with what the meta was and what was being played was just not super fun. Like I don't even understand the appeal of playing Sun because most games you should just lose going second, and this just makes the experience miserable for everyone else, in my opinion. Oh, and this doesn't even consider like a mirror. Runic stun mirror. How fun would that be to play? Hey, well, yeah, having to deal with stun was probably pretty annoying. It's just not fun to play against for this kind of event. So normally for like rank ladder, it's not like as bad because you only have to play so many games and then you just get master one and you can't demote after a certain point, so that also helps, right? But like for like Duelist Cup Phase 2, it's just absolutely miserable because you already know stun basically thrives only if they go first, right? So if they're losing coin flips, they're just completely losing. It's not even a good deck. It's just annoys everyone else, essentially. So it's just toxic deck, really. That's about all it does. I don't think it was super viable just to play raw stun. Runic stun, on the other hand, has some going second ability. So a little bit better in that regard. So I get playing like Runic stun to some extent, but Runic stun should just simply not be a thing. Like it shouldn't really be allowed to be run into Duelist Cup Phase 2. It just makes the whole fun event unfun. Unless you want everyone to play Runic Stun. Is that what Konami wants? Maybe, I guess. Maybe I should just try playing Runic Stun instead. Hmm, cool. For sure, that will be fun for everyone. Every duel will take like till turn like 15 or something. Great. Yeah, that'll for sure be the play. And yeah, that is just not a world I'm looking forward to being in, you know? A world where everyone's playing Runic Stun. Hmm, yeah. I mean, regular stun is easier to deal with to an extent because, yeah, you can remove stuff, and going first, you should never lose against stun almost, except some builds actually were playing, of course, like Nadir Servant, so that means they have like some removal, and also they were playing like some cash cards, notably like Fenrir, so that not great either. So, yeah. That's about all I got for you guys today, and I think I'm for like meant to talk about a little bit of something else. I think I'm missing a few points, but just generally, all of the floodgating happening, like I got Harpy Featherstormed. I just got negated like from playing the game essentially by these floodgates, like in a bajillion different ways. So like let's say you get a Rysard, you can't play the game, okay? But it's not the same way as like Fossil Dyna, right? So you can't out Fossil Dino with a Kaiju. You can out Kishira Arisar with a Kaiju. Against Inspector Border, you can out that with a Kaiju. It's just RNG, like. And then against Harpy's Featherstorm, you can out that with like a Red Reboot. But this doesn't work on Fossil Dyna, nor does it work on Arisar. So, like, depending on how you're getting floodgated as well, it comes back to the same issue as the, I guess, kind of the issues with Math Mech and like Bistrals, all that stuff. So if you're getting Fossil Dyna, you the way you would out Fossil Dyna, well, it's a bit different from how you would out Border, unless you simply have Raigeki. But of course, Raigeki is then bad against, for example, Dragon Link. It's not super good against that. It's not super good against, for example, Early. It's not super good against. Did I say Math Mac? It's not good against Math Mac. It's not good against Branded. Like, it does do stuff against Branded, but I mean, Branded opening, so not the best. It is good against like Falsadina and Inspector Border though, but it's not good against Harpy's Feather Duster, so or not Harpy's Feather Duster, Harpy's Feather Storm. Not good against that. Is it good against Skill Drain? Nope. Is it good against maybe Rivalry? Tikaboo? Nope. Okay, so then we have evenly matched. Is evenly matched good against those? Kinda, if you can play through like one Floodgate, so you just have to deal with maybe like just Skill Drain, maybe just Tikaboo. Maybe you're alright. But then if they just have Fossil Dyna with back row, they just keep the Fossil Dyna after like evenly, and then what do you have there? Nothing. You're just in pain, I guess. Considering you can't out their back row without like trying to get rid of Fossil Dyna first, and then they can just normal summon like, assuming they just have like Inspector Border, and then they normal summon Fossil Dyna the next turn, you're really not doing a whole lot. So yeah, assuming like you evenly your opponent in this case. So not great. Keeping in mind, of course, like best of one, and you have no information on what your opponent's playing exactly. So the cards I put in, they just have to put in work, like always. Like always, these cards will have to put in work. It doesn't matter what I'm against, so that's rough. Like here, this Shifter better put in the work, and then this Frost better give me something good. Rates off would work. We don't have to worry about Troll with this hand, at least. Technically, I mean, this, both of these deal with Troll. And they also deal with Maxi, which is pretty swell. So that'd be awesome, I guess. So, yeah. I think that's about everything. So, yeah. That's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.